Everyone loves loaded carries for core strength, but most people are doing them wrong and they're giving up a bunch of other exercises that are far more effective for core strength development. In this video, I'm going to share what loaded carries actually do, which exercises work better, and how to turn all of that into a killer core workout. To start with, we probably need to figure out what loaded carries actually do. This study here compared farmers' walks to exercises like planks. And the way they did it was they got the person to do the plank, measured how much force they put into a force plate by resting on it, and then they used the same amount of load for the farmers' walks themselves. They based the time of the plank on what a 25-meter farmer walk came out to. So you can see both the duration and the load were very similar for both exercises. And what this study, and others just like it, show are that the muscles that are most activated from loaded carries are actually muscles in your lower back, not your midsection. Comparatively, these lower back muscles were activated up to 50% more than the muscles you'd associate with your six-pack. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing because, as the saying goes, you're only as old as your spine. So we definitely want a strong, resilient back as we get older, but that means we're neglecting these muscles at the front of our core if all we do is loaded carries. When we look at separating the kind of loaded carry that actually works versus what doesn't, the suitcase carry actually activates muscles up to 2 to 3 times more than the bilateral farmer walk does. And while that all sounds terrific, and there's certainly research to show how beneficial suitcase walks can be, they do come with some problems. How can adding more load to an exercise possibly make you less functional? This study here shows that adding load to your gait pattern can improve things. This study was done on stroke survivors using loads as low as 7% of body weight to improve gait mechanics. Basically, the load forced muscles to switch on properly and improve things for them. But the thing to remember is they were using only 7% of body weight. For me, that's only 5.5 kilo. And the second part of that is they had a physiotherapist walking next to them continually, coaching them on posture, gait mechanics, and breath. Compare that to how most people do farmer walks or suitcase walks and see if their gait or something else changes when they do them. As a quick check, if you need to hold your breath or your breathing mechanics change at all while doing a loaded walk, you've changed something that's probably kind of important. There are a number of studies on hikers and military personnel to show that when you change gait and breathing mechanics, you can actually end up with a tremendous amount of injuries from them. So we know that suitcase walks are more effective, but how do you do them correctly? The first and most important thing is to look at the loads you're using. Remember, in the stroke study, loads as low as 7% was seen to be as effective, and actually when you look at most studies, they're using loads as low as 50% of body weight because they're not impacting gait negatively. Remember, the goal with these is not to go as heavy as possible, it's to go as correctly as possible. And you'll notice straight away with a heavy dumbbell or kettlebell that instantly you change something about your posture or your gait. And because one or both of those things change, you're not actually training the thing you're supposed to be training now. No one cares how functional your core is while you're tipped to the side like a banana. When we look at these studies on the normal farmer's walk and the suitcase walk, actually the thing that stands out is that a rack carry is even more effective. I was unable to find a study that compared single or double rack carries to the other kinds of walks, but you'll have to test it for yourself and see, because a field test done on a heavy rack carry will teach you that there's far more rectus abdominis engagement from that than there is from a bilateral farmer's walk or a heavy suitcase walk. But for best results for all core muscles, that's lower back muscles, obliques, and rectus abdominis, the single-sided, bottoms-up rack carry beats all of them. And at this point, you're probably thinking, well, if heavier is better, why not just do a double bottoms-up rack carry and be done with it? And the answer is because very few people are going to be able to do it and not change their breathing, posture, or gait mechanics while doing a double bottoms-up carry. It's a tremendously demanding exercise. Now, when I taught for FMS, they created this thing called the functional capacity screen. And one of the tests was actually a farmer's walk test using 75% of body weight. That's not to say that this load is a perfect training load, but one of the things we looked for was changes in gait mechanics or breathing. And at loads as low as 75% body weight, we usually didn't have to see that until the person was just about to fail. In other words, this is not a bad training load to start with. In general, the loads that are beneficial for these exercises are going to be much lower than people think. Many studies use loads as low as 25 kilo, and the study showing the bottoms up rack carry to be the most effective used as little as 16 kilo. But these exercises still aren't even close to the best possible ab exercises you can be doing if core strength is your goal. If high levels of core strength and stability are for you, then stick around and watch this next bit. This meta study here went through more core training variations than you probably even know exist. Now, when we look at the following numbers, they're all based on this thing called maximum voluntary contraction. So that means that if I tense a muscle as hard as I can, we take that as 100% of maximum voluntary contraction, or MVC. All of these numbers are a percentage of MVC. And we look at muscle activation for farmer's walks, we see scores of 10 to 16%. And when we look at suitcase carry results, they're from 19 to 33% of MVC. Now, the best rectus abdominis exercise shows as high as 80% of MVC, and compare that to the farmer's walk, which shows as little as 10% for the rectus abdominis. This first crunch variation, lying flat on your back with your hips at 60 degrees and your knees at 90, is called a curl up and shows an 80% result. Even the lowly front plank scores a 78% result and the side plank a 75% result. For comparison again, the farmer's walk is a 10% MVC contraction for the rectus abdominis. But if you really want to go crazy, you can do a suspended front plank on a TRX and hit levels as high as 145% of MVC. And unstable squatting, like a Bulgarian squat or a 6RM back squat, sees scores as high as 210%. For the obliques, that same curl up that really hit the rectus abdominis hard hits the obliques incredibly hard. Likewise, a Swiss ball unstable front plank hits them at 76%. Even a one-arm hardstyle kettlebell swing sees an 80% MVC contraction, again compared to the suitcase walk and the farmer's walk, far superior. For the lower back muscles, no surprise, the things that see the highest numbers are typical strength exercises like deadlifts, squats, and rows. So all of these exercises hit the abdominals much better than farmer walks. What's the best way to include all this and get the best you can from your core training? Looking at how loaded carries hit the spinal erectors and multifidus the most, it makes sense to put them on a squat or deadlift day when those muscles are already being worked. One of the problems with getting older is that we obviously want a strong, resilient back, but we also need to make sure we're not overly fatiguing it and working it every single day. Your lower back is the kind of thing where everything seems okay until suddenly it doesn't, and next thing you know, you can't do any exercise for 6 to 8 weeks while you heal your disc injury. But for the strongest core muscles, there are plenty of other exercises that hit both rectus abdominis and your obliques much, much harder than loaded carries ever will. My suggestion is to pick a day where you do rectus abdominis work, another day where you do oblique work, and then stick your loaded carries on the day where you're doing deadlifts and squats. And if you want to see how to put all that together, you should watch this video here.